Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you're not new, then thank you guys so much for coming back. I really appreciate your support. So my last video, we talked about my favorite fragrances, or my favorite discoveries of 2020. So I know it's already the new year, but I thought I would talk about my, I guess, fragrance fails of 2020. So these are all of the fragrances that unfortunately didn't work out for me for one reason or another, and I'll tell you why. So yeah, these are all my fails for 2020. If you guys want to see what perfumes didn't work out for me, then just keep on watching. So just a quick disclaimer, a lot of these perfumes, actually I think all of these perfumes, I don't own anymore. I either sold them or I returned them, and that's strictly because, as you know, I don't collect. I wouldn't consider myself a collector, only because if I'm not in love with something, I don't keep it. I don't save things for the bottle. I don't save things necessarily for the memories either. I only keep what I reach for and use and love. So yeah, I've either sold them or returned them, but you guys would have seen them in hauls. You guys would have seen them in hauls or declutters or something like that. So yeah, let's just get into it. I wrote them down so that I didn't forget. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, as I'm talking about it, I'll insert a little picture so that you guys can see it. So yeah, starting off is 7 Virtues Vanilla Woods. So this one I got because someone on YouTube had described it as an edible woody vanilla, and they said it smelled like something edible, like cake. So I was really intrigued. I got this at Sephora because unfortunately this is one that I think it was exclusive to Sephora. I couldn't find it on any discount websites. So I got it because I was expecting a woody vanilla. But on me, honestly, something about this just pulled really weird on my skin. I think it had pear, woody notes, and vanilla. But if I wasn't looking at the name or the notes, I wouldn't have even known it was supposed to be a woody vanilla, because on me, I feel like I really got the pear, but it just did something weird on my skin. And because I like the branding behind this, so it was, they used all natural ingredients, and it was a Canadian brand. So obviously I had no problem supporting them for that. But I think because it was all natural ingredients, it was honestly so subtle. You really had to even try and sniff it out on me anyways. It was just way too subtle. I didn't get that edible vanilla or a woody vanilla at all. It was maybe a vanilla pear, if anything, but on me it just did something weird. And yeah, it wasn't enjoyable, and for the price, because I had to get it from Sephora, there was no way. So I ended up returning it. Luckily Sephora has a really good return policy. So yeah, that was my first fail. And I actually didn't show that in any of my videos, I don't think, because I didn't want it to seem like I was bashing it or anything, but it was just from the get-go, I knew I didn't like it. Next up was Burberry Her Intense. I got this one strictly because I was obsessed with Burberry Her, the original. And the Intense, the notes, I don't know, it seemed like something I might like, because I think the only difference was that it had berries and benzoin, I never know how to say that. But anyways, this one, to me, it was a fail strictly because there was something in it. I think the berries in it made it smell medicinal. So on my skin, it almost smelled like it had a medicinal quality to it. It smelled like a berry, kind of cough syrup type of thing, which I just didn't like. In the dry down, the longer I wore it, I felt like it was slightly reminiscent of Burberry Her, but I mean, to me, the original was just so good. It couldn't be beat. So I ended up returning this one too, because yeah, on me it was just medicinal, and then in the dry down it wasn't different enough to keep it. And I think it's that benzoin mixed with the berries. I just didn't like. I love the original. That will forever be one of my go-tos. That's my baby. But yeah, the Intense was just, to me, it was gross. It was like a berry cough syrup, slightly medicinal. It just wasn't a vibe. And then we have Nina Ricci. I think it was called Rose Extase or Rose L'Extase. I'll have the picture here. It was a baby pink bottle. The bottle was gorgeous, so girly, so beautiful. It was pink and gold. Literally, it was the one time I had considered saving something strictly for the bottle, but then obviously I talked some sense into myself. But I got this because again, a YouTuber had said it was a jammy rose. I'm not going to mention who the YouTubers are because, you know, scents in general, they're like really subjective, you know, so it could smell like that to them, but it didn't to me. Anyways, someone had described this as a jammy rose. A lot of people actually describe this as a jammy rose, but remember, like, everyone's skin is different, everyone's taste is different. What I like, and I have a sweet tooth, so what I consider sweet, you might not. What you consider sweet, I might not. Like, it is what it is, okay? So someone described this as a jammy rose, and I'm okay with rose in my fragrances as, like, if they're blended well. But if it's just like straight up rose, I'm not into that. I'm not like a huge floral perfume lover. But I got this because jammy rose, I was expecting like a raspberry sweet jammy rose, you know. But when I got this, I got zero sweetness out of it, like zero sweetness or minimal sweetness. And it was just like a really fresh, clean rose. And it smelled super like innocent and feminine, which I know a lot of people would love, but to me it was just a little bit too clean, too fresh. It was too rosy, for sure. I was kind of wanting something more like what's it called, Intense Cafe, you know, that sweet sugary rose. I love that. I was hoping for something like that, or more raspberry, like a jammy rose, you know, jammy, sweet, jam, sugar, raspberry with the rose, not just like rose. Anyways, so for me, it was a no. I ended up gifting it to someone actually because it was not my vibe. I'm sure it was pretty and I was considering keeping it and like mixing it with other things, but it just wasn't me. It was way too feminine, way too fresh and clean and rosy. It was just way too rosy, honestly. So yeah, that was that. And then we have Roberto Cavalli Gemma di Paradiso. So I got this, like a lot of people did. It was going around everywhere at one point. The bottle was stunning. I think I got this one because the bottle had me, okay? I was obsessed with it. Beautiful. So to me, this one, I don't know. Okay, so it really, like, in the dry down, I feel like it did remind me a lot of Carolina Herrera's Good Girl, which I really like. I love that scent, actually. So it reminded me of that, but it had like an added, sharpness. I don't know what it was. It was almost like a green, again, like a medicinal, or I forget the word, but herbal. It almost had like a herbal kind of green medicinal sharp note in there, mixed with Carolina Herrera's Good Girl. But to be honest, because it was similar and reminded me of that, I prefer Good Girl. And again, like, I really loved the bottle, but I didn't want to keep it just for the bottle. So strictly because of that, like, herbal, medicinal, there was something in that gave it like a weird, like, sharpness, or just something that, like, I couldn't agree with. That's the only reason that one didn't work out for me. And then we have another expensive one. So I picked up a travel size of Kilian's Princess because I was looking for like that nice marshmallow. People were just saying it was like a very beautifully sweet marshmallow scent. So I got it for that. But it was mixed with ginger, which I love. I love ginger in my scents. But there was a tea note, and honestly, I wanted to love this, and I feel like I would have if it didn't have that tea note. So the only reason this had to go back was because, first of all, it was hella expensive for me not to be like obsessed with it. But also that tea note was I can't do tea notes for the most part. Like, in fragrances, it just gives me an instant headache. So that one gave me an instant headache because of that tea note. I feel like if it was just the ginger and the marshmallow, I would have loved it, but yeah, because the tea note, it was a no-go for me. And then we had Viktor&Rolf Dancing Roses. When this first came out, everyone was saying it smelled like a cherry Jolly Rancher. I was scared because the name says Dancing Roses, but in the opening of this, it did. It smelled like a sour, tart cherry Jolly Rancher, which I loved. I was obsessed with the opening of this. So I made the mistake. I went to Sephora, I smelled it, but I didn't wait for the dry down. I loved the opening so much that I ended up buying a travel spray because I'm not crazy. But even the travel spray is kind of expensive, you know. So I bought the travel spray because I loved the opening. It was that sour, kind of like tart, mouth-watering, juicy Cherry Jolly Rancher. Okay, like if you know, you know, I was obsessed with it. But then like the dry down and something in the middle there again had like this kind of like sharp medicinal vibe, and I just couldn't get over it. I wish it stayed like the opening, that Jolly Rancher cherry tart sourness. I loved that, but then the middle and the dry down was just not for me. It was kind of medicinal, so I ended up returning that one. And then let's talk, I think it's called Casmir by Chopard Casmir. Bottles will be over here, okay? Someone had described this as like a vintage peach cobbler. Honestly, I should have known. All I heard was peach cobbler, okay? The second they said peach cobbler, I was like, and I started Googling it, and it seemed like, you know, I looked up the notes on Fragrantica, and it seemed like it would be good, but I made the mistake of ignoring that vintage part. And I think I'm coming to realize that, like, honestly, for the most part, I'm not into vintage scents, because this, in the dry down, this was like an oriental perfume, I feel like, but in the dry down, it did smell a little bit like peach cobbler, but like a dusty old peach cobbler, like peach cobbler with mold on top, or like a dustiness, and I just couldn't get over that. So I feel like at the very end of it, I kind of liked it, but like the opening was dusty, it was vintage, it was old, dusty, like it smelled like dusty, and it smelled like a moldy, dusty peach cobbler, okay? So I just couldn't do it. I ended up having to sell that one because it was just, it was not for me. It was pretty affordable, but still not for me. And then we have Valentino Donna Acqua. So I did a whole review on this. I got this because of, I think it was the almond, no, almond and, I don't know if it had almond and pistachio, but almond. Anyways, I was hoping, again, for like a, and it had pear, which I love. I was on like a pear kick at the time. So the opening of this smelled like pear and pistachio ice cream. It was creamy, it was sweet, it was delicious. The opening of this had me. Honestly, I loved the opening. And I think a lot of people did. But the opening lasted all of 5 minutes. And then that pear, that pistachio, creamy ice cream vibe was gone, and then it was like really like floral, slightly soapy. I feel like the almond in it, I think it was the almond mixed with those floral notes, made it smell kind of like soapy, like a soapy floral scent, which is, that is so far from my vibe. If I want to smell like soap, I will take a shower, but for the most part, no, I don't want to smell like that. So that one was not for me. I wish the opening stayed though, because the opening was, it had that juicy pear mixed with those nutty notes. It made it a little bit creamy and yet juicy, and it was delicious, but no. And then there's Girl of Now. So in my last decluttering video, I had said it wasn't what I expected it to be, and after that video, I ended up selling it. Yes, I did, because I bought Girl of Now with the hopes that people were describing it as like nutty and fluffy and sweet and yet heavy, okay? But to me, there's a difference between like heavy and syrupy, okay? Like syrupy is the word that I would use for Girl of Now. I was hoping it would be kind of like a fluffy nuttiness because it had the pistachio, it had the almond, but yeah, honestly, this to me was, it was heavy. I wouldn't describe it as fluffy, and on my skin, I wouldn't describe it as nutty, because the almond in this was almost like marzipan, which is kind of like thick and sugary, you know? So, but on me, my skin pulled a lot of the orange blossom, and it was just, it was thick, it was syrupy, it was sweet, but it wasn't the nutty, like roasted, nutty fluffiness that I had hoped for. It was good, but I wasn't reaching for it like I was hoping, and I wasn't reaching for it enough to keep it, so that was kind of a fail. My hunt continues for like that perfect, like nutty, like roasted, warm, nutty, fluffy. That's what I'm looking for. But Girl of Now to me was like syrupy, it was heavy, it was sweet. My skin pulled a lot of the orange blossom as opposed to the nutty notes. So that sucked. And then last but not least, we have Shaghaf Oud, which I think I mentioned in my winter favorites. I was trying to love that, honestly. I got it in the summertime, and when I first got it in the summer and I sprayed it, I didn't like the opening. I think I said that from the get-go. The opening was really spicy. Like, I feel like it smelled like incense and spice, and it was loud, and it was a lot. It was a lot to take on. But then, like, the longer it sat, when I got it in the summer, I liked it. It was sweet. But then, like, the more I wore it, I just felt like it had too much going on. It was too loud, and it was really polarizing. So I feel like depending, like, where you went, it could take over the room, and it could go either way, because people could hate it or they could love it. And every time I wore it, my family told me I smelled like a spice market. Not in a good way, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I ended up getting rid of it. I just found another perfume that had like that. It was a sweet oud, so I ended up keeping that one instead. Unfortunately, Shaghaf Oud didn't work out for me. I know it's a fan favorite. It is what it is. I feel like I liked it sometimes, but it was hit and miss, and so for that reason, I like something that I like all the time. You know what I mean? That I could just grab, know I'm gonna like it, and go. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.